Welcome, welcome everyone. Happy Monday or whatever day of the week that you are watching this. I'm Claire Wasserman, founder and author of Ladies Get Paid. We are an educational platform, global community, and a book that is all about helping women earn more and live better. And as part of that mission, we invite coaches on most days to our LinkedIn platform, also simultaneously streaming to YouTube and Facebook because technology is awesome. And what I ask our coaches to do is share the thing that is most resonant to them, what is exciting them. And as you've noticed, if you've been following along, we've got coaches from all walks of life. But I tend to I should never say favor, but I tend to lean towards those who help us relieve financial anxiety because money is so much more than math. And so today we have Lindsay. And Lindsay, I'm going to have you say your last name because I realized I
Sure.
should.
It's Bryan-Podvin. That's exactly how
Okay.
it sounds exactly as it looks. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So Lindsay, she is the founder of a brand called Mind Money Balance. Such a good name. She's a financial therapist and wellness expert, speaker, content creator, author. She's also practicing LMSW. Remind me what that is.
Yeah, I'm a licensed social worker. So that's a master's in social work.
Fabulous. And so you use, as you say, and you're going to go into more detail because you are the expert on you, but Lindsay uses an empathy first approach to help people get their minds and money in balance, focusing on the intersection of money and mental health. And if any of that feels like, what is the intersection? It's everything. And it's, for some of us, well, those of us who've gone through any kind of sort of quote financial trauma or lived through scarcity, it's really acute, but there's probably subconscious ways that anyone listening, you might be standing in your own way of having an even healthier relationship with money. And so the goal for our conversation today is to really understand how, in Lindsay's word, putting the personal finance, putting the personal back into personal finance, how to release any money shame, and digging into financial psychology in general. Lindsay, thank you so much for being here. I would love for you to talk more in detail about what you do, and I think most interestingly, why you do it.
Oh, thanks for having me here, Claire. So I am a financial therapist, and the way that I define that is that I already have a background in therapy, and so I'm a practicing social worker, and then I also have additional training in financial therapy and financial social work. And the work that I do clinically is I spend about 80% of my time with clients helping them understand the emotional and psychological side of money. So my work is less about how to make a budget and more what's getting in the way of talking about one. Why is it hard for you to stick to one? What's going on that is causing anxiety? And I came to this work pretty organically. I went from my first job after getting my master's degree into the world of the nonprofits. And when I got my first paycheck, I was earning less than I was as a waitress. And I had a tremendous amount of money shame. My parents paid for me to go to school, and I felt like I had completely squandered my privilege. Here I was living paycheck to paycheck, even though I didn't have the same type of financial burdens that many of my peers had. And it led to so much shame and embarrassment and guilt. And even when I tried to do what all the personal finance experts told me to do, it didn't really land the way that I thought it would, because a lot of it was about shaming me. It's your fault you're in this low paying job. You just need to work harder. You just need to stop buying lattes and then you'll be fine. And I was looking around my world and I was like, well, I'm not doing any of those things, but I'm still struggling. And it just felt like there was a huge disconnect. And then parallel in my clinical work, so many of my clients were struggling with money because I specialized in anxiety and depression. And my training did not equip me to talk to people about money in a really meaningful way. Anytime a client came to me stressed about finances, my role was to help advocate for them and say, hey, let's call the energy company and see if we can negotiate a bill on your behalf, but not to actually figure out why they were under earning, why they were struggling to manage their personal finances, what made them anxious about investing in retirement. So that's kind of where I started. Fast forward, I couldn't get this idea of like financial therapy out of my head. And I sought out additional training in financial social work and in financial therapy. And then it brings me to where we are today. So some of my time is spent clinically, one-on-one helping patients. And then some of my time is spent going into corporations and helping them understand what financial wellness is and helping to empower their teams to understand the emotional side of money.
Wow. So important. What might be some first steps if I were to work with you, that you would take me through?
Yeah. So the first thing is I would start with the end in mind, meaning I would say to you, Claire, okay, if we work together and you are working on healing your financial anxiety, how would you know your financial anxiety is healed 6 months from now? Like, what would have to happen in your world for you to feel better? And what people often say to me is they're really good at articulating what they don't want, but they might struggle to say what they do want, right? So they might say, I just don't want to be stressed out at night. And I don't want to be tossing and turning because I'm worried about money. And then I'll say, okay, well, what does that mean? What is the opposite of not tossing and turning? So trying to figure out exactly what that person wants. So starting with that end goal in mind, and then we go backwards. So we're kind of working on two sides of a timeline. One is, where do you want to go? And then the other one is, where did you come from? Meaning, what was the type of household you were raised in? What was the community that shaped your formative beliefs about money? What were some of the big firsts related to money? Your first job, your first paycheck, the first time maybe you lost a job or made a big financial mistake. Trying to figure out what were some of the impactful things early on in your life or that were really meaningful to your life that might shape why you do what you do with money. And then we see if we can figure out a healthier way to engage with your money to get you closer to the goal that you want to achieve.
I love hearing client stories or personal stories. I think they really illustrate well kind of the takeaways that I hope folks get from this. Does anyone come to mind, or that anyone could be you, of an experience that you either had or helped somebody through where you took them from a place of either overwhelm or confusion to having clarity and then ultimately better decisions or healthier decisions around money?
Yeah. So in my work, because it is therapy, it's protected. But what I can say is I can kind of use a pseudo person that I have worked with. And this is kind of a cluster of different people. So if it sounds like someone you know, just know that this is, a pseudonym. But let's say I was working with someone like Pam. So the person that comes to mind is a woman named Pam. She's in her late 30s and has been in this cycle of racking up credit card debt, working really hard to pay it down, feeling good for a little bit, and then going right back and doing that same thing. And Pam has done all the things she's supposed to do. She's gone to a credit counselor. She's cut up her credit card. She's talked to her partner about, how to kind of scaffold and create some safety around that spending. And what we did was we figured out why she was spending beyond just the behaviors. Meaning, in so much of personal finance, they just tell you, well, just stop spending, put your credit card on ice, cut it up, just don't do that. But we don't ever stop to give people something else to do instead of that behavior. So with Pam, we figured out that of the four main chemicals that are released when a person goes shopping, dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, and endorphins, she was really looking for endorphins. And for her, what that meant was that she wanted a rush. She wanted to feel like she'd completed something. She liked the novelty of new things. And so every time she was feeling bored, lonely, a little bit antsy, she was reaching for her credit card, because turns out shopping is a really great way to have your endorphin needs met, right? It's super predictable. You can kind of go around, shop. You get the excitement of purchasing something, adding it to cart, and then having it show up at your front door in 48 hours or less. So what we did with Pam is we created a list of what are other things in your life that help you to get your endorphin needs met. What are some ways that you can feel like you've accomplished something? Turns out they loved to bake and hadn't been baking for a long time. They also really loved taking their dog on a walk and exploring new parks and hadn't been doing that lately. So we created a laundry list really of things that she could do when she felt that itch to go shopping and to try and do one of those things instead. And one of the most important things, Claire, when I was working with Pam was to say, this won't work 100% of the time, because shopping, that endorphin rush that you get from shopping, is really hard to recreate in other ways. So just know that if of the 10 times you want to go shopping, 9 of the times you do something else, that's a win. And that's also really important when working with clients, is to not fall into all or nothing thinking, black or white thinking. You're either good at money or you're bad. So helping her to find what is her ability to spend a little bit less while having her chemical needs met.
Wow, that's so good. Everyone, for those of us who are type A type people, please don't see please focus on progress, not on perfection, for everything and anything. I love that so much. Are there certain common either commonalities or patterns that you tend to see in the specifics of money anxiety? Because the shopaholic, the overspending is one we often hear about, but I also know that underspending is another one that people really struggle with. It seems like a quote good anxiety to have because technically you wouldn't get into debt over something, but that also means you're probably not enjoying life. So I don't know if that one rings a bell or any others, but I'm curious if you tend to see certain patterns around the specifics of money anxiety and money shame.
Yeah, one of the biggest patterns I see, I tend to work mostly with women and non-binary folks. I tend to see that perfectionism come up exactly as you were talking about, Claire, and that perfectionism in relationship to their money shows up as avoidance. I haven't opened up a 401k. I haven't looked at my work tasks and sat down with my boss at my performance review to negotiate a raise. If I have a child, I haven't opened up a 529 because I don't fully understand it, right? Women feel, and this is backed up by research, that they have to know everything before they take that first step versus feeling like they can learn along the way. And so oftentimes financial anxiety shows up as two main things, as perfectionism and procrastination. And what I find in my work is that they're really two sides of the same coin, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to do this particular financial action item until I understand it perfectly, right? So we're kind of frozen in this state of perfection. And what we forget is that oftentimes the way that we learn is by doing things. A metaphor I often use is when you are helping a kiddo learn how to ride a bike, you don't just put them on the bike and they pedal off and they nail it the first time. There might be, a handful of kids out there who have done that. But most of the time, what happens is they spend some time wobbling. They spend some time figuring it out. They probably fall down a handful of times, and eventually they get better. They learn how to balance. They are able to go, one house distance to 3 house distances. And we forget that when it comes to money, we're also allowed to wobble, but we can't wait to be perfect until we start. So in a lot of my work, it's figuring out what's the very first step that you can take to feel a little bit more comfortable about this financial task, and helping them to learn that they will learn more as they go on their financial journey, but we absolutely have to start.
What I know everybody's different, but what might be some things that people should not be procrastinating on? Like if you had to pick certain areas to focus on in your financial journey, you're like, the longer you wait to do this, you're really like not only losing time, you're like losing money.
Yeah, one thing that comes up a lot, again, because I work a lot with women and non-binary folks, is that they tend to forget that metaphor of putting on your own oxygen mask first. So oftentimes I'll work with clients who are maybe saving up for their child's college education, but they haven't fully funded their retirement account yet, right? They prioritize the people that they're caregiving for rather than themselves. So it's not necessarily a specific thing, but it tends to be that they are givers more than they take care of themselves. So that is one example of funding a 529 without starting a retirement. But other things are saying yes to partners or to parents or to friends when they maybe don't have an emergency fund yet, right? So this people pleasing, this wanting to caregive, and this wanting to take care of others at our own financial expense. And so I think all of those things kind of compound over time. If you're not taking a look at your budget, if you're not investing in retirement, if you're not having an open conversation with your partner about money, all of those things over time can really harm us in the long run. And the big fear that I find comes up is just this fear of it being awkward or it being a fight, right? Whether we say to a friend, hey, I actually can't afford that girls' weekend, or whether we say to a partner, actually, we have to dial back our spending. There's such a fear that somehow talking about money will erupt into a fight or into conflict, right? A lot of my clients will say to me, Claire, well, I just don't like confrontation. And they have such a strong association that talking about money is automatically going to be heated, that we have to figure out what are some more neutral ways that we can talk about money, or some positive ways that we can talk about money, to start creating some healthy associations so that not everything has to feel heated or intense or scary.
What are some of those?
Some of the
ways that you can talk about money to prevent it from getting to a heated place.
Yeah. So with a partner, I think it's really important to give them a heads up. What a lot of people in romantic partnerships do if they have to talk about anything intense, but particularly money, is they do what we call like a doorknob moment, right? The hand on the door, they're walking out to the car and they yell up the stairs, "Hey, hon, FYI, maxed out the credit card. Talk to you later." And they get in the car and leave, right? We tend to do these big emotional bombshells and then leave or not want to engage in it because we feel like, okay, at least I said it. I said what I needed to say, but we don't create a lot of space to have that dialogue. Instead, I think it's really helpful to say in a neutral setting, "Hey, hon, I want to let you know we need to talk about the household spending. We keep maxing out that credit card. Can we talk about it on Sunday?" And what you're doing in this scenario, Claire, is you're saying, "Hey, here's something we need to talk about." You're also not saying it's my fault or it's your fault. And you're also giving them ample opportunity to prepare themselves to have the conversation as well. And putting it literally on the calendar, like after we, have our coffee on Sunday morning, we're going to talk about it. Or after we put the kids to bed, we're going to talk about it, can help to not make it feel like you're catching them off guard and you're including them in the conversation. And then also knowing like, look, if the conversation starts to get heated, that's okay. You don't have to finish it right then and there. You can simply say to your partner, "I can tell I'm getting heated. I can feel my heart rate raising. Let's table this until maybe tomorrow and come back and have this conversation again." So you're learning how to bring up tough conversations with your partner, and you're also learning how to create a healthy two-way dialogue. When it comes to other conversations, let's say the example of, your friends inviting you away on a nice long weekend, which sounds lovely. What a lot of people will do is they will ghost instead of articulating exactly what's going on, right? They'll be like, "Oh, that sounds so fun." And then when it comes time to get a final head count for that vacation or for Venmo requests to be sent, there's just no response. Yeah. Rather than saying, "Oh, I would love to join you for a girls' weekend. Unfortunately, it's just not in my budget." And then offering something else. I think a lot of times with us, we're worried that if we say no, those invites will dry up, versus saying, "Hey, I can't do an entire weekend, but I'd love to join you for brunch, or I'd love to catch up with you next week and hear how it goes on a walk," right? We forget that everybody has to engage with money. Everybody has to interact with money, but ghosting is much more likely for you to lose those invitations with friends than saying, "This is not in my budget, but I still want to stay connected. Thanks for the invite. Let's figure something else out."
Mm-hmm. I have my own thoughts on this, but why do you think these conversations are so fraught? And I apologize for asking you such short questions that give you no chance to drink water in between.
All good. So I think it's a hard question to answer succinctly, but what I'll say is that so many of us are raised in households where we don't talk about money. So we don't have good role modeling for what money conversations look like. Predominantly, when I talk to my clients about what money looked like in the household, it falls into one of two categories. Either it was really tense, and every time money was brought up, it was a fight, it was an argument, it was frustration, or money talk just got swept under the rug, right? A kid will say, "Hey, mom, how much money do you make?" And they'll say, "Shh, we don't talk about that," right? So some of their first money messages are, talking about money is going to cause a fight, or talking about money is rude and we don't do it. So we get that from a very young age. And then as we grow up, oftentimes we are in fields where money conversations are shut down, in particular fields that are dominated by women, things like teaching, social work, nursing, veterinary care. All of those fields are fields where we're chronically underpaid, and we're often told, "Oh, you did this because you care about the work. You're not here to make money." So we have those messages reinforced time and time again. And then the other thing that I think happens, Claire, is that we all assume that other people know what they're doing with their money. We just won't ask them about it, right? We assume that our friend who invited us on this long weekend has all her money stuff sorted, but we actually don't have a clue unless we talk to her about it. So those are kind of the three dominant themes that I see, but I'm sure there are many other reasons why talking about money feels fraught between friends.
Yeah. How can we forgive ourselves for maybe making, quote, mistakes in the past, right? Whether it's getting into credit card debt or not negotiating salaries, for whatever reason. Just like we learn how to do something differently now and we're proud of ourselves for it, but there is a letting go of the past that should happen, or maybe it's not a letting go. I don't know. There's a coming to peace with it.
Mm-hmm.
curious in the work that you've done, how can somebody get to a place where they're like fully rooted in the present?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to first start to differentiate between money guilt and money shame. We tend to use those words interchangeably, but they're slightly different, and this will make sense in a moment. So money guilt is external. I did something bad, I made a mistake, whereas money shame is internal. I am a mistake, I'm bad with money. And so anytime a client comes in and they're saying things like, I'm bad with money, I'll just never understand it, I'm so stupid, I'm hearing money shame. And so the first thing I want to do with them is to help separate out the action that they took from the person that they are, right? It's okay to have made a money mistake. It's okay that you got into credit card debt, or that you didn't negotiate for that raise. And how can we make meaning of that mistake so that we can forgive ourselves and move forward? So it's usually multiple steps, but one first is separating it out. You are not bad with money. You made a mistake with money. And those two things are very different. And then it's figuring out, how did you get there in the first place? What were some of the things that might have been going on that led you to lean on credit cards or made it difficult for you to advocate for a better salary at work? What might have been some of those contributing factors? And then moving into education. How can we make meaning of the mistake? How can we learn from the mistake and gain a lesson from it? And I think what a lot of people do is they jump to that education. I'm just going to listen to podcasts, I'm going to read books, I'm just going to learn more about money, without going through those first two steps and forgiving themselves and separating themselves from that mistake that they made and figuring out why they made that mistake in the first place. So creating some space and some distance from the mistake is the first step in healing money shame, then followed by figuring out why you made that mistake, and then finally making some meaning of that mistake by getting education and support.
Amazing. I love it. Do you have any resources that you can recommend besides, of course, your own? And by the way, once we're done, you can hop right off, but I would love for you to jump back into the LinkedIn page and just comment underneath the recording with your links. But yeah, are there any, whether they're podcast, books, resources, apps or whatever, things that you have found to be helpful?
Yeah. So of course, my book is The Financial Anxiety Solution, and it's a workbook that helps you kind of work through the emotional side of money, specifically focusing on financially anxious thoughts, financially anxious feelings, and financially anxious behaviors. For people who are interested in learning more about the psychology of money, Morgan Housel has a book out about money psychology that can be helpful. I also think Barry Tessler of The Art of Money, she's one of the original financial therapists. She does a lot of somatic financial therapy, which means she asks you to feel into your body the way that money shows up for you. It can be a little out there, but it can also be really healing depending on what direction you want to go. And there are a lot. I find more and more often money coaches are getting into understanding the emotional side of money, that it's not just about having a spreadsheet and adhering to it, but figuring out why you want that spreadsheet in the first place and whether or not a spreadsheet is even the best option for you and your makeup.
Yeah. So you mentioned financial anxious thoughts and feelings. Are there any that you could give as an example for in the moment? Because a lot of what you talked about was like going back to the root,
Yeah.
taking a long lens of it, but like really micro moment when somebody's having a certain spiral rumination. You'll give us examples, of course, as it's specific to money. What are ways that they can get a larger perspective rather instantaneously?
Yep. So let's take kind of a small financially anxious thought. It'll be easier to work through. So let's say you went grocery shopping and you thought you were getting a bunch of stuff on sale. And after checkout, you realized that a bunch of the things that you bought, in fact, were not on sale or were more than you had budgeted to spend. So on the drive home, you have these financially anxious thoughts that sound like, I'm so stupid. I can't believe I didn't double check with me. I should have shopped around more. That was so wasteful. And all of those financially anxious thoughts are then connected to your feelings. And when I say feelings, I mean the way that you feel in your body, but also the emotions. So you might be experiencing anxiety at that top level, but underneath the anxiety, you might be experiencing some of that guilt, some of that embarrassment, some of that worried that we've been talking about. And what a lot of people try to do is they try to engage in some healthy reframing. And a reframe is taking a thought that might be negative or harmful and thinking about it through a lens that shifts it to be a bit more neutral. A problem that a lot of people have when they try to do a thought reframe is they jump from negative to positive. So they go from, I made a mistake at the grocery store. That was so dumb, to I'm so smart. I never make money mistakes. And what happens is our brain doesn't believe that new thought. It's like, you're kind of lying to me. I don't really believe it. And then we actually end up feeling worse, because when we use like an affirmation or a mantra that doesn't really resonate with us, our brain's going to push that affirmation or mantra further away. So instead, what we want to do is kind of put on our scientific hat and go, how true is it that I don't understand money, that I always make mistakes, that I never look twice before buying things? And you might come up with a handful of times where you have made money mistakes or where you haven't double checked the price on something. But what you also might find is that you actually have a lot of evidence for being pretty financially savvy, for having negotiated a raise at work, for having answered your kiddo's question about money in a really healthy, shame-free way. So then we start to have a little bit of data that says, yeah, here are a few mistakes you made, but also here are some behaviors that you've engaged in that have been really positive and really healthy. Maybe the reframed thought looks more like this or sounds more like this. Yes, I didn't double check the prices at the grocery store. And I know that moving forward, I can just whip out my phone and make sure that I get the best deals on things moving forward. Having made one mistake at the grocery store doesn't make me bad with money. So that would be a way to reframe the thought, which is kind of looking at all sides of the story and creating a neutral or more positive response than the one that we tend to jump to, which is like worst case scenario.
Awesome. That was so great. So great. And so true about like mantras, positive affirmations. If you don't believe it, it's not going to work. And then you think something's wrong with you because you're like, I've read that this works. Why is it not working with me? It must be me.
Exactly.
So I just want to end, second to last question here is just generally self-advocacy, being your own champion, yes, in money, but just sort of in work and life in general. What are some fundamentals that folks can be working on consistently to get to the place where they really, really, truly are their sort of biggest cheerleader?
Yeah, well, one thing that I think I've kind of whispered throughout here is the importance of figuring out what works best for you, both emotionally and financially. And one thing when it comes to making personal finance personal is figuring out ways to make your money work for you that are most aligned with your values and your behaviors. When we make money choices based on what a random person on the internet says, it might not feel that good because it's not what matters most to us. When we learn more about personal finance, we can kind of pick and choose the things that matter most to us, whether that is how we want to save or what we want to save for, who we give our donations to or who we help out in our family, and how we invest in our future. When we take financial actions that matter most to us, we're most likely to stick to them and to help create a positive feedback loop and continue to do financially positive things with our money.
Awesome. Love it. Finally, where can people find you, follow you, and most importantly, pay you?
Yes. So my brand, as you mentioned, is called Mind Money Balance. You can find me on Instagram, YouTube, and my podcast and website are all of the same name. If you want to bring me into your organization, you can go to mindmoneybalance.com/speaking to learn about some of the custom talks that I give and see whether or not it might be helpful for your org to pay me and bring me in and talk to you about the emotional side of money.
Awesome. And we've got about 2 minutes left. So the floor is all yours. If there are things that you haven't covered yet, I mean, it's just a huge, huge topic, or maybe a favorite story, again, whether it's you or a pseudonym of a client, words of wisdom that you'd like to leave us with. It's all you.
Yeah. So one thing is that we're talking about financial psychology, and I think it's important that even though it feels like a really new field, financial psychology has been around for a long time. However, it's mostly been used by marketing and advertising to kind of trick us into spending more. And now finally, both the financial services field and the therapy field have kind of caught up to this data and gone, maybe we can use this data to better improve our relationship with money and help individual people feel better about money rather than using it to extract people's dollars from their hands. So it seems like it's a newer thing that you're hearing and seeing pop up on your social feeds, but it's been around for a long time. We're finally just taking that data and taking that research and applying it in a new way.
How do you see the industry changing?
Ooh, yeah, that's a great question. I think so. I had zero financial psychology or behavioral psychology training in my grad program. And now I'm really thankful to hear that was, about 12, 13 years ago now. I've been really excited to see that more social work grad programs are including behavioral finance and financial social work. More and more marriage and family therapists are having to have at least a module, which is more than I ever had on it. And more certified financial planners and finance professionals are having education on things like money psychology, financial anxiety, and money trauma. So I can kind of see both areas of the field kind of democratizing information and making sure that they have access to it, which then obviously is disseminated and helpful to their respective clients. So I think we're just going to see more financial psychology show up across the board. And I think it's a win for everyone from professionals to the people who are receiving that information.
1,000%. Yeah, because you came to this when you realized in the work that you were doing and being in the social work and the psychology, like huge part of this is money. Why is there not any training in it?
Right.
So grateful for you, the work you do. And yeah, if you don't mind putting in some of those, your own links, but also the resources you mentioned, we already got Shantae asking for it. If y'all are watching this on YouTube and Facebook, come on over to the Ladies Get Paid LinkedIn page. Also join Ladies Get Paid. We're ladiesgetpaid.com. You can also find me on Instagram, and on LinkedIn, but on Instagram at Claire Gets Paid. That's my preferred mode of connection. Super appreciative to you, Lindsay. Thank you. Thank you. And to everybody out there, now go get paid. Bye.
Thanks, Claire. Bye.